Live. You caught me scratching my eye. I'm Shannon Penrod, and first and foremost, I want to let everybody know that we got all of your messages. We are all okay here. It's been a wild and woolly couple of weeks, let me just say. But everyone is okay. There have been members of our team that were evacuated. There are members of our team who were on standby to evacuate. The studio itself looked like it might have to be evacuated. We were in heavy smoke area, but everyone is okay, and I want to thank everybody for all your thoughts and your prayers and your concern. We weren't always able to get back to you in real time because there was a lot going on. But things are better. We are back. We are here, and it's funny. We did our first show of the year 2 weeks ago and a day ago with Dr. Grant Pichet, and I said, it's our focus this year that we're going to be positive. You know, come whatever may, we're going to be positive. And the universe said, are you sure? And I'm here to say we're 100% sure we're going to keep things positive because good morning, Anna. I'm a big believer in the serenity prayer, which is grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So we're going to be really focusing in 2025 on all the things that we can do, all the things that are possible, and whenever possible, things that we can do today that are personal accountability for us that can move the dial in positivity. And so that's honestly what is driving today's topic, because in just a few minutes, we're going to do a parent-to-parent about 10 positive things you can do today to support the person or people that you love on the spectrum. I think it's a great way for us to start out our Autism Live 2025 journey. But there are going to be a lot of topics that we're going to be talking about. We also want to apologize. We had some amazing guests who were scheduled to be with us during the last 2 weeks when we've been off on fire duty. And we are going to be rescheduling with them, and I can't wait to have them with us. So stay tuned because there's a lot of really exciting stuff coming. Not the least of which, we're going to be moving our studio. So by April 1st, I hope that we'll be able to be presenting to you from another location. I believe that will be our 4th studio in our time doing this show over the last 15 years. So we're getting better at the moving thing. We're definitely, but it's a lot, you know, so stick with us. We're doing the best that we can. I also want to say we're live right now. Today is Wednesday, January 22nd, and we're excited to be here. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and a dozen other places that our fabulous Chris Desmond is starting to show you. And yes, I know that Twitter is called something else, and no, I'm not participating in that. Just keeping it positive. I'm old dog, not learning new tricks. But we're also available wherever you get your podcasts. I know that the lion's share of you listen to us in podcasts. You can hear I still have a little bit of congestion between fires and colds and things. I apologize for the clearing of the throat and hopefully no coughing. But excited to be here. As I was saying, most of you listen to us in podcasts and take us with you, and we really appreciate that. When you have time, if you want to see what we do here, we are visible in video and sound on YouTube, and that's a great place to catch up on old episodes. But also, we love it if you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get the podcast. It is a free download wherever you're downloading it. That's really important to us. It does mean that you get ads, and I hope that you are excited by that. I hope that you go, woohoo, an ad is playing because that means that I got this for free. That's really what it's all about. Now, for some of you, that's not the ticket, and we understand that, which is why it is available if you pay a small monthly fee for $5 over at glow.fm/autismlive. If you go there, you can, $5 a month subscription, you get everything that we do on the Autism Network, everything that we do. Autism Live, Ask Dr. Doreen, and all the other supporting shows, you get those ad-free automatically in your inbox, and they're there waiting for you. So if the ads are making your life difficult, head on over to glow.fm/autismlive. Otherwise, celebrate that you're getting the podcast for free because we have sponsors who are willing to sponsor us. All right. For those of you who might be new to the program, I'm Shannon Penrod. I identify as a proud pony. I am a parent of a neurodiverse individual. Those are the words that my son gave me to describe what my relationship is to his diagnosis. It's such a dicey thing, right? I used to do a one-woman comedy show called the Autism Monologues, and in it there was a character who says, people who have children who have diabetes don't refer to themselves as diabetic mothers because that wouldn't accurately describe them, right? And it's a mouthful to constantly be saying, I am a parent of an individual who was diagnosed with autism. So I say pony, proud pony, very proud. And I know there's a whole controversy over neurodivergent and neurodiverse. I use the words my son gave me, which is neurodiverse. There we are. There we have it. I make no apologies. Taking no prisoners. So that's who I am. Thrilled to be here with you. You know that everything... Hi, Raina. So happy to see you. Everything we do here is for that larger autism community, everything that we do at the Autism Network. We want to support the wide range of individuals in this larger community, which of course starts with, at its beating heart, are the individuals on the spectrum that we love. And we revere and respect and try to elevate their voices every opportunity that we can, right? They're the beating heart of our community. But we also include in that community everyone who loves those individuals. And I count myself in that category. Let me be very clear about that. I know that sometimes it's difficult. It's like, who's on the spectrum, who's not on the spectrum? I do not count myself as a person on the spectrum. That is not my journey here. My journey is to love individuals on the spectrum, and I take that very seriously and support and be a good ally, an accomplice whenever necessary. I want to say that there's a lot going on in the world. If you are somebody who has been dealing with the fires or any one of the million other things that's going on, we have people who are covered in snow in Florida today. There's stuff going on in the world and other things we all know. And the word autism is coming up in the news and sometimes not always in the best context. That's why I'm focusing on the Serenity Prayer. What do I have control over? What do I not have control over? And let me have the courage to do things about things that I have control over. Hello, Paula. So thrilled that you are here with us. So that's why we're starting off today with 10 positive things you can do today to support the person that you love on the spectrum. Now, I know when I do these parent-to-parent talks, a lot of time we go through them quickly. I'm just not going to do that this time because I feel like I don't want to breeze past any of these because they're all important and I feel like they link to each other. But I also want to open up the chat here for those of you who are, if there's stuff going on that you need support for, please feel free to write in as we go too because that's important to us as well. But again, if you're just joining us, we're all okay. We survived the fires. It was crazy. And we are concerned for people. We have friends and family who have lost homes. We are particularly aware of how stressful this was for the autism community. If you need help and support, let us know. We've had a lot of people reach out to us with resources that have said to us, refer people if you know of people that are having issues. So let me put that out there. But today, 10 positive things that you can do today to support the person that you love on the spectrum. Because I feel like this is really the crux of it all. If we can be doing these 10 things on a daily basis, things are going to get better. Always. Okay, so let's jump right in with number 1. I think that this is critical, and sometimes I think we have a tendency to think, oh, well, of course, that's a duh, but it's not. It's not. I remember a very specific story. For those of you who are listening, what it says is, show them you love them exactly as they are. Let's all take a breath there. I think this is so critical and important. I have to be careful about what I say here, but there is a story of a parent who is kind of well known, but that it took this individual many, many years And then he said at a private setting, so I don't want to disclose who it is, but he said, if I could do one thing over again, it would be that I would go back and say to my child on a daily basis, you are exactly the child that is of my heart, and that I wouldn't have you any other way. And he was very emotional about it and said, I thought that was just understood. And I've realized as a parent that should never be taken for granted. It's so important that this is the foundation of everything that we do as allies, as accomplices, as parents, as significant others to individuals on the spectrum, is to assure them that they are fine exactly as they are. That we don't need to change them. They don't need to be somebody different. They don't need to think differently. That who they are, we cherish, love, respect, and revere. Now, I know for some of you, this is going to be like, but. We're going to get to your buts in just a second. But let's start here, because we can't do anything if we don't show these individuals that exactly how they are is totally fine. And I want to stop for a second and say, let's put this on the other foot, because I know, listen, I'm a strong cup of coffee. Not everybody's going to love me. And I have learned in life to accept that and to accept myself and be who I am. But I always say that the best gift that my husband ever gave me, well, two. He gave me the two best gifts I ever got in my life. One was making me my son's mom. But the other one is that my husband loves me for exactly who I am, not in spite of who I am. And that has been such a healing thing in my life that I hope as a parent that I can show up and do that for my child on a daily basis. And I hope that we all get to experience that in our life. Because I want you to think of somebody in your life who says they love you, and I'm sure that they do, but wants you to be different than who you are. Fundamentally. Would like you to dress differently, or like you to look differently, or speak differently, and you know it, right? And how does that make you feel? It's not good. It's not good. It's not what you need. And now I want you to think about someone or the someones in your life that light up when you walk into the room, that say, oh my gosh, I love this about you, and how healing that is. Let that be the first and last gift that we give our children and our loved ones that are on the spectrum. And now there's a million different ways to show somebody that you love them exactly as you are, and it can be a spoken thing. We're going to talk about love language in a minute, but this has to be the be-all, end-all. The be-all, end-all. We have no place to go if we don't have this. And if you're saying to yourself, yeah, I'm sure I do this, challenge yourself. Find the way today. Find the way today. Have the conversation in whatever way the conversation can be had. Remember, conversation is not just spoken. Have that conversation with your loved one. Now, I would say to you, this is not just about individuals on the spectrum, but because for the purposes of this show, let's be particular about this. The world is constantly telling people on the spectrum to be differently, think differently, act differently, dim down their light, right? We don't have to do that. We don't have to participate in that. Let the person that you love know that you love them exactly as they are. Now let's move on to number 2, because I think this is going to solve your buts. Allow them the dignity of learning. Now, this is where it gets a little dicey and where I think people get very confused. Because if you say to someone, I love you exactly as you are and you don't need to change anything about you, then why are we doing therapies? And why are we doing, right? And people get confused. Well, that's you trying to change the person. Hold up. This is about learning. I believe in the civil right of every single individual to learn and to grow. That's the right of everyone. That is the right of a 2-year-old. That is the right of a 102-year-old. They have the ability to learn and to grow. That does not mean that you do not accept them for who they are at all. These two things are not mutually exclusive. They go together. If you truly love someone as they are, then you also allow them the dignity of learning, which also means that you allow them the room to sometimes fail. That's part of loving somebody. I like to go back to the example for parents sometimes about walking. That especially for parents on the autism spectrum, because most of our kids, not all, but most of them, get quite good at walking. It becomes a task that they have mastered to some degree. And yet, in the beginning, when they were learning how to walk, it was not elegant. And many of them actually even would fall and hurt themselves, right? That is the typical development of anyone learning how to walk. And yet, as parents, we did not say, nope, they hurt themselves, that's it, I'm stopping that. No, we allowed them the dignity of learning. We allowed them to go through the frustration of learning how to walk. We even allowed a certain amount of danger. We tried to mitigate it. We put bumpers on the coffee table. We put gates in front of stairs, right? We tried to mitigate them hurting themselves while they were in the process of the dignity of learning. But we didn't stop it and say, nope, you came out as someone who does not walk, and we, in an effort to show you that we love you exactly as you are, we are not allowing you to hurt yourself in the process of learning how to walk. We don't do that. Why don't we do that? Because we know the trajectory of walking. We know what that looks like. We've seen it with other people, and we know that there's going to be a good end to the story. It's going to take different amounts of time, but we know the outcome of that book. So we allow it, and we allow the dignity of learning. It gets a little dicier when we have an individual who's on the autism spectrum and we don't necessarily know the trajectory of learning how to communicate. We didn't all go to college for that. It was just sort of this thing that happened in front of us, and if it's not happening for somebody, we don't know the nuts and the bolts of it, right? So it becomes a little bit scary. And not everyone learns how to communicate in the same way. Not everyone is vocal, but all communication is not vocal. I always think of Mike Hipple, and Mike, I don't know if you're watching today, but Mike came to us. He was an older teen when he first started watching the show, and Mike was somebody who he communicates with assistive technology. And the one thing that Mike has taught me is that this is a civil rights issue, that if we don't give somebody the ability to communicate in whatever form that should take for that individual, and it's very specific to the individual, but if we don't give them the right tools and the right teaching to do it, it is a civil rights issue. We are denying them their civil right. And they will become frustrated. And they will engage in behavior that is typical of frustration. Aggression, sometimes towards people or belongings or themselves, right? We need to allow the dignity of learning. It can be dicey because you have to ask yourself on a daily basis, am I teaching them something, a skill that is important to them? Or am I trying to get them to behave in a way that makes me feel more comfortable? That's the litmus test. Because if you're trying to get them to behave in a way to make yourself feel comfortable, then you got to back up that bus. You got to back up that bus. What are you so uncomfortable with? Now it's your issue. You got to spend some time with yourself. Listen, we've all been there, right? There have been times when I was someplace with my son and I was like, I just want you to behave like this because it'll be easier for me. I need to be honest about that. But that cannot be the place of love in which I'm meeting him. I need to accept him, which means accepting myself, which means acknowledging that what those people over there think of my parenting is none of my business. This is a phrase that I say often. It's in my book. Other people's opinions of my parenting is none of my business. Because guess what? That comes under the heading of things I can't control. I could do everything under the sun to convince these amorphous people out here whose opinions occasionally I allow to dictate what's happening for me. But if I really think about it, I could do everything under the sun and they could still think that my parenting is wrong. So why am I trying to please them? When the most important person to me on this planet, whose opinion matters to me more than anybody else, is my child. So I got to accept myself for who I am and accept who and love who he is, and then I have to allow him the dignity of learning. It's a tightrope. It's a tightrope, but I think it's a tightrope worth walking. And when I talk to my friends who are on the spectrum, it's very clear to them. Accept me for who I am, but allow me to grow. Why would you try to take that away from me, right? Brian, good morning. It's good to see you as well. Okay, so allow them the dignity of learning. I like to take it back to, if somebody says to you, oh, I'd like to learn how to speak Mandarin. And we say, great, let me help you to set you up with that. That doesn't mean I want to change that person. And once they learn Mandarin, they are not going to be a different person. They will grow and have skills, and that will inform how they look at the world, but it's not changing who they are. And I'm not going to love them less if they don't speak Mandarin, right? And I'm not going to love them more because they do speak Mandarin. I may appreciate their talent at being able to speak Mandarin, right? And it becomes one more thing to love about them, but I'm not going to love them less if they don't. So we accept them and we tell them, you are perfect the way you are. And I love every bit of you, every inch of you, and you don't have to be anybody other than you for me, because I love you exactly as you are. And then we allow them the dignity of learning. They go hand in hand. All right, number 3, we need to listen. It's hard. It's hard. I always think about the dad who said to me, he said, I didn't even find my voice until my child didn't have one. And I do think that there is a part of the growth of when you love somebody who is not communicating as quickly as you are used to, there becomes this, I think there, for many of us, I'll speak for myself, this need to fill the gap. And then as we allow that person the dignity to learn and their communication gets better, right? We have to stop. Ooh, this is the hardest task for me in the world. I have to stop and I have to make room to just be and listen. And if I'm asked for help, to respond accordingly, but to not jump in constantly. I was talking to a parent the other day who has a very young child who was diagnosed and is not yet speaking, but is making sounds. So there's every bit of hope that this child will be speaking. And talking to this parent, I said to them, what do you want more than anything else for this child? And they said, I've heard you talk about this, Shannon. I want to have the big conversations. I want to be able to sit, because my thing was always I wanted to sit on a porch swing, look at the stars and the cosmos and everything, and have a conversation with my son where we would talk about, our beliefs about why we're here and what is all this, and, the big stuff, the stuff that's not just, A, B, C, and 2 + 2 = 4, And this parent was saying, I've heard you talk about this, and it's what I want. I want to be able to have big conversations with my child. But more than anything, what I want is for my child to be able to communicate to me and tell me what's going on with them. Boy, that really hit home with me. And I remembered what it was like when my son was 3, and that was the thing that I wanted more than anything else in the world. Well, here's the interesting thing. One of the first things that I learned was he was communicating with me. It just was on a frequency that I was not used to hearing. That I love the expert who was speaking at a thing I was speaking at, who said, everybody votes with their hands and their feet. And if you want to know what's going on with somebody, start with that. Look at what their hands and feet are. If their feet are pointed away from you, they're not having what you're serving, right? If they're blocking you with your hands, they don't want that, right? It is communication. It's not as clear as what we're hoping for, right? But that's something that can be worked on. That's something that we have a measure of control. If we allow the dignity of learning, then we can make communication more efficient and more effective. Does it take time? Yes, it does. But we have to start by listening and building the trust of, I am going to listen, I am going to hear you. Yeah, we're going to talk more about that in a second. But I picked this picture of this dog. For those of you who are listening in podcasts, there is a dog, and he's got one ear sort of cocked, and his eyes, it's clear that he's listening. But he's listening actively with his whole body. We have to remember that listening involves our ears, for sure, for absolute sure, but it involves all of our senses. That are you listening? Listen, if your child is passing wind on a regular basis and it is foul smelling, you need to be listening to that. That's telling you something's going on with their intestines, right? We need to be watching what is happening with their facial expression, but not just going off of that again, going to hands and feet, listening to the sounds that they are making, the things that they are moving towards, the things that they are moving away. It is a sacred thing, and I think that, I have to remind myself whenever I'm around a new person, especially a new child on the spectrum, that I got to slow myself down and activate all of my listening. Takes me a minute. I'm not as good as I would like to be, but I'm allowing myself the dignity of learning. I'm going to get better at it. I am getting better at it. Brian says civil rights and dignity of learning, not denying it. Very good. A great talking point at upcoming IEP. Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. We've got a slide about that kind of thing. Brian says, I have to listen more as well. My son's PDA and excessively mind simply requires silence sometimes. A lot to deal with currently with my son. Thank you for reminding me about communication and needing to stop talking and being quiet at times. Yes, Brian, and it's something I have to remind myself all the time too. We cannot put ourselves in a category where we're going to force ourselves to be perfect at this, because we're not. Perfection is not what we're going for, right? We're allowing ourselves the dignity of learning, that we are going to get better and better and better at it. But I guarantee you that if you get still and listen to some of the active things that your child has going on, you will start to see a shift. Because I don't know if you've ever been in a circumstance, listen, as a woman, I can tell you I have been in this circumstance where I'm in a room full of men and nobody's listening to me. And it wouldn't matter what I did, because I'm not the pretty girl, right? It wouldn't matter what I do, nobody's going to, it's so frustrating for me, so frustrating for me. And you kind of pitch up and you do all the things that everybody tells you are not the ways to communicate. But if one person in the room says, wait a second, what did you just say? Then I can calm myself down and I can say, what about this? And I feel heard. It doesn't have to be everybody in the room. One person listens to me, then I can slow it down because I see somebody's listening. Somebody's going to hear me out, right? I guarantee you, it's a fun new trick to play with, slowing it down and just saying my job right here, right now is just to listen. What do I take in? Okay, number 4, do their favorite activity with them. Okay, now I have here a picture of a child covered in paint because that might be one child's thing that they really want to do. But if you ask yourself right now, what is the thing that my child most wants to do today? And it may not be the same as what they wanted to do yesterday, but if they're, and when I say child, I'm talking about child, teenager, adult. If they're 88 years old and they're your child, we don't have another word for that in English. We do, but they're all cold, and I don't like them. Like I can say progeny, right? But, that's cold. So just know when I say child of any age, let's just say it's your teenager, and if you think, what is the thing that they want to do most in the world? And then I'm going to ask you to force yourself to do it with them today. You don't have to do it every day, and you don't have to do it for hours on end, but go do with them their favorite activity. Now, this came up in my mind because my son asked me the other day if I wanted to do his favorite thing, his favorite activity right now. And I have done it with him in the past, but I said, "Oh, I just don't have time." And then yesterday I was like, What don't I have time for? You need to slow that roll, Shannon, and go do that with him, because those days aren't always available to us, and we have the ability today to do them. So whether it's for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, or 2 hours, go do their favorite activity with them. And it might be the thing that you like least. You know, for some of you, playing a video game is torture. Do it anyway. Do it anyway, because you'll feel better. I guarantee you. Tell me tomorrow. But I know you're going to tell me that it's better. Sometimes it requires a great deal of patience on your part. Be willing. Be willing to do that. If we go back to the serenity prayer, that's something you have control over. You don't have control of all the other mishigas that is going on in the world right now. But today, you can go and do whatever your child's favorite activity is with them for 45 minutes. You can make that happen. And then notice the difference that it makes in you, and notice the difference it makes in them. Notice the difference in their willingness to communicate with you. It's life-changing. So do that today. I need to do that with my son after telling him, "Oh, I just don't have time." Remember that old song, Cats in the Cradle? Whoo, we can't be doing that. Find time to do their favorite activity with them. Okay, number 5. Learn and speak their love language. Okay, especially for our individuals who are on the autism spectrum, this is important for everyone, but it's especially important for individuals on the spectrum. We all have a different love language, right? And one love language is always stronger, even if it's just by a little bit, you know. And if you are not, everybody know what love languages are? Like, for some people, you got to do things for them. You do things for them, and to them, that is love language. We all have that friend that you could get them every gift under the sun and they're unimpressed. But if you do something for them, you show up and work at the bake sale that they're working at, they go, "You are the best friend ever." I have a dear friend. Other people, it's what you give them, right? I have a dear friend, and it's easy to confuse the two together. I have a dear friend that we were friends for a long, long time, and then we were teaching someplace together, and I was talking about this sewing machine that I was getting because I had met this woman who refurbs old sewing machines, like old sewing machines from the 1902 up through industrial sewing machines from the 50s. And this friend of mine said, "Oh, does she have any of the industrial ones from the 50s?" And they were inexpensive. And I said, "I don't know, but I'm going, and because it was far away, I said, "I'm going." And she said, "If you find one, pick one up for me." And I said, "Okay, I'm not going for a month, whatever." I ended up going a month later, and I got her a sewing machine, and I came back to LA, and I said, "Oh, by the way," I called her up, I said, "I've got a sewing machine for me." And she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You told me if she had a sewing machine to get you one." And she said, "That was like a month and a half ago." I said, I know, but I didn't forget it when I was there. And do you want this sewing machine or not? I'm sure somebody else. And she was like, "Are you kidding? Of course I want it." And she said to me, the fact that you remembered that, and it wasn't the sewing machine. It was the fact that I had said that I would do it, and I did it. And she said, we will be best friends forever. I said, "Really? I didn't realize that was the criteria." But for her life had been filled with people who made empty promises, and I was somebody who said I was going to do something, and I did it, and for her, that was a love language, right? For other people, it's physical. It's physical, and if you aren't petting them and hugging them and kissing them and whatever, they don't feel loved, right? And Then there are the people who are just driven by praise. You praise them and they preen and they feel loved, right? It's so important. Often we mistake and what we do for other people for love language is that we give them what we like. Except that that doesn't work. If you are somebody who's driven by praise and you love praise and attention and it makes you feel loved, and you shower praise and attention on somebody who likes gifts, it's like wasted time. They don't receive it in the way that you want them to receive that. So it's really critical that you stop for a moment and think, okay, what makes my child feel loved by me? And if you're not sure, do a bunch of experiments. Give your child a gift and see, do they feel, do they noticeably feel loved? Sit and hug them and squeeze them and see, okay, now are they showing signs that they feel loved? You'll see when you hit on the right one. Give praise and see, is that the way that they feel loved? Or do something for them and see. And it could be, a hybrid, but most of the time there's one very distinct one. And then give yourself the task of regularly speaking that love language to your child. It doesn't mean to the exclusion of all the other ones, because I think everybody likes a gift occasionally, and not everybody loves the hugging and the touching, right? But people who like praise, will also take a hug from time to time. But learn what the love language is for your child and speak that love language. I see that Autism Journey with Elijah is here. Good morning. So happy to have you here. And I'm just thinking about a little guy who said to me, I want merchandise, right? That he likes stuff. Now, I don't know, that may not be his total love language, but that definitely on the day that I saw him, he was about, where's the stuff? I would like some stuff, please. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's somebody's love language, that's their love language. Let's make sure we speak it. Brian says to check out the BBC new show, Inside Our Autistic Minds, figuring out what is controlling their behavior and busy in their brain is so important. This show will be insightful for all here. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see that. And I had a blast too when we were with him, Autism Journey with Elijah. Okay, number 6, because we're running out of time. Tell them 3 things that you love about them. Now, this is another way of checking out a love language, but and it's also a way of pairing a love language, because telling somebody what you love about them is an act of love. It may not be the be-all, end-all for the person that you're speaking to, but there's nothing wrong with it. And telling someone what you love about them, there's a million different ways that you can do it. I loved that for Valentine's one year, I made a scrapbook page for my son, and I had pictures, and I think I did 10 things. But I had pictures of him, and then I put text with it about, I love the way you, or I love that you, whatever. And it was, he loved that. He just absolutely loved that. I think we can't do this too much in life, but if you tell somebody today 3 things that you love about them, and then watch what happens as a result. We can go through life and tell people all the things that we want them to do different, like pick up your socks, put your dishes in the sink. We can do all of those things, and they'll still be there, right? But what if we could change their day today by telling them 3 things that we love about them? It's powerful stuff, you guys. So, and not everybody, this isn't spoken. Not everybody has the ability to take that in terms of language, right? But you can show them. You can absolutely show them. Whether it's that you need to sit in front of a mirror with them and touch and touch their nose, and then kiss their nose and say, oh, I love your nose. You have the best nose, right? There are many, 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 many different ways to communicate things that you love about somebody. But I love the scrapbook page, because then you have it forever, and it's there. Okay, let's go on to number 7. Celebrate something. And now, this might be a little controversial, but I can't imagine why. There's always something to celebrate. And I have said from, as soon as we started to realize how to help my son have the dignity of learning and teaching him new things, we were forced, literally forced, to celebrate it on a daily basis. And in the beginning, that felt weird. I was like, what? This is so unnatural that we're like, yay at everything, right? And then I realized, why am I being such an old putz about this? This is actually fun. And if we have the choice to go through life celebrating everything or being down in the dumps of things, let's pick the celebrating. But what I realize is that there's always something to celebrate. And there's different levels of celebration. There's celebrating the fact that you woke up and you're breathing, right? And then there's celebrating small victories and notating them, and then there's celebrating the big things. I was just saying to Chris before we started the show that yesterday was the last first day of school for my son, maybe forever. I don't know, unless he goes to graduate school, because yesterday was the first day of his senior year of college. And you guys know that one of the things when I'm like back to school, that I always say, do something to celebrate the day back to school. Well, he's 21 years old and has a whole life, and he's a college senior, so we didn't go to the arcade last night, but we went out to dinner. I said, hey, it's your last first day of school. We'd like to take you to dinner. You pick the restaurant, and we went and we celebrated. And it's funny that when you look back at your life, you're not going to remember the mundane stuff. You're not going to I guess we will remember that we've been through 2 weeks of fires, but it will be a blip. It will be a blip in time. We more likely will remember all the dinners that we've gone to celebrate something at school, right? I guarantee you there's something to celebrate today. It could be their half birthday, it could be their birthday, it could be that they finished the worksheet that you were working on with them. It could be that they said please, or they said thank you, or they signed it, or they shared the icon to ask for something. Find something to celebrate today. And have it be different levels of celebration. You don't want to have, a brass band for everything, right? I was picturing like a video truck pulling up in front of the house. You're going to save that for like the most extreme things, right? But celebrate something today with the individual and hopefully celebrating them. Thank you, Eric. Yes, it's a very big deal. Autism Journey with Elijah says the tongue is the strongest muscle in the body. Using it to make someone feel good. It doesn't just help them, it helps us to feel good too. Absolutely, 100%. And they went on to say, memories that we make now are going to be more special as the time goes by, priceless times to remember. It's true. I am forced to remember and talk about some of the hard times just so that you guys understand that I know how hard it is, right? But I'll be honest with you, when I think back to all the years of intervention, the hard things that I remember are the hard things that other people put on us. That people who made it harder, like when school would make it harder, or when somebody would say something insensitive, or somebody wouldn't include my kid. Those are still the pains that I have, right? But what I remember more than anything else is the fun that we made on the way. That because we noticed for us, and I don't know if this is true for everybody, but I would be working during the day and starting and stopping because my son was having therapies and my husband was working and my son was doing all the things that he was doing and eventually going to school. But then there would come a time at night when we would come home and it was time to shift gears and it was time to make dinner and have the bath and get ready for bed and and that transition was hard for all of us. All three of us just struggled with it. And somebody made the suggestion, you got to have a clear boundary that stops this moment, and there's a little pause break before you start the next moment. And the suggestion that was made to us was to play one song and dance it out. And I would say that we probably did this for maybe a year and a half. And then the transitions got easier and we didn't have to do it anymore. But that's what I remember. I remember when we would put on, and the song would be like 2 minutes and 42 seconds, and we would dance in the living room and be nutty people. And that's what I remember. That's what it feels like to me. So make the memories, celebrate, do the thing you got to do, because it is what you'll remember. And more importantly, it's what they'll remember. When people ask my son, what do you remember about therapy? He says, I remember playing with people. I don't, that's what I remember. And that's what, I love that. I love that, by the way. Okay, moving on, number 8. Okay, create a daily check-in ritual, some sort of routine, something that you have with your child. It can be a fist bump thing, or it can be, we get a 3-second hug, or there's just so many different things, right? Create some sort of a touch point ritual between you and your child. And by the way, this can change as they grow older, right? When my son was little, my ritual was that anytime I had to pick him up to put him in a shopping cart or to pick him up and put him in the car, what I would do is I would hug him and smell his head, right? Because I knew that the day was going to come when I couldn't pick him up anymore. And boy, it comes faster than you think it's going to come, right? Later on, we had different rituals that we do, but once again now, there were a lot of years when this was not the case, but now when I'm able to be with him, we have a hug. It's a great thing, boy. It's a wonderful thing, because there were years when that was not the thing. He didn't want the hug from the mom. Now he wants the hug from the mom. But some sort of a daily ritual. It can be, by the way, one of the things that we've been doing for a little over a year is that we play Connections together as a family whenever we can, and it doesn't necessarily happen every day, but even when we were on vacation in Scotland, somebody would go, oh, is it time to play Connections? And then the 3 of us play Connections together. It's a great way to check in. It could be sending a text with your teenagers. I often trade funny videos with my son, and it's a way for us to check in during the day. Find something that is unique to you and to your child, that is a way to just have that connection point every single day that is unique to you guys. There's something so special about that. In the picture that's being shown, they're making a video call. The mom and the child are making a video call, maybe with dad or with grandma or with somebody else, or watching a video together. There was a phase where my son was all about the Screaming Goats videos, and he would want me to sit and watch a Screaming Goat video with him. You do what you got to do. It was hilarious. I have to say, I enjoyed that. But make some sort of a daily check-in ritual with your child. It can be a little song that you sing. It can be a little dance move that you do with each other. Whatever it is, find something that is unique to you guys. All right, number 9. Be willing to learn. As a parent, we are not going to get it right 100% of the time. In fact, if you're getting it right 82% of the time, I'll happily nominate you for an award. There will be no Mother of the Year award for me. But I'll tell you something. It's more important to me to be a student in the front row than to get an A in the class, right? I want to constantly be learning. And what's interesting is that our kids are constantly changing. They're growing. If we've allowed them the dignity to grow, they're going to grow, and what they need changes. And what we need to do needs to change too. So we always have to be willing to learn. And sometimes it's learning from an expert who says, hey, the way to deal with this is this, and then trying that out. Sometimes it's going directly to the source, to your child, and figuring out what do they need. How I have to learn how to parent this child, right? There is no manual. For years I thought, oh, he came out of my body, I should know what to do. I let that go because nobody handed me a manual. So I gotta be willing to learn every day. It's really humbling. Okay, and number 10, we have to respect their no. Oh, you guys. Oh, you guys. I just want you to start first, think about yourself. Think about times in your life when you have needed to say no, how hard it was, and that sometimes you gave the no and it was somebody who did not respect your boundaries. Now, there's a whole spectrum of that, right? From the very smallest thing to trauma. But let's just be honest, that when somebody doesn't respect your no, what happens to your feelings about yourself? And what happens to your feelings about them and your relationship to them? It's not good on any level. So we must, it's critical that we have to respect their no. So if you're, and I know this is hard because you're like, well, we have to get in the car and we have to go to school. And we're going to be late. And I'm telling my child, we have to go and we have to get in the car and we have to go and we have to go now. Or I'm going to be late to work, you're going to be late to school, and there's repercussions. And we are in that mode. Believe me, I have been there. But if your child is saying no, I want you to stop everything. Stop everything. And slow it down and ask them what they need. And that's going to look very different depending on what your child's needs are. But we've got to respect the no. And the no comes in many different ways. I want to evoke our dear friend Richard Stripp, who has been with us before on the show, and he wrote the book, I'm going to get the title of it wrong, Mom, I Wish I Could Tell You What They Did to Me at School Today. And in it, he tells different stories of different kids who say no in lots of different ways. There was the boy who every morning he would throw his sneakers in the trash. And his mom would be looking everywhere because he's got to get his sneakers on to go to school, right? She couldn't find him, and then she would find them in the trash, and she would be so harried, and she would put the sneakers on him, and she would get him to school, right? But what she didn't know was that there was trauma happening at school. Now, sometimes the trauma is something that, but it's still trauma, right? But it's infinitely fixable, and sometimes it's the worst things imaginable, right? If your child is saying no, something is going on, and we have to be willing to stop and ask questions and try to solve it because we have to respect their no. We aren't always going to be able to solve it in 1 minute. But I want to say to you that your child's ability to trust you is more important than anything else. It's more important than the school. What are they going to do? They're going to send the truant officer? And they might. And they might. But you know what? Then you can have the conversation and say, well, we're having a problem because there's not enough reinforcing happening, or my child isn't safe at school, or whatever that thing is. I'm using school as the example, but there's a million reasons why our kids say no and things they say no to. We have to draw a line and say, if nobody else, I am going to respect the no and listen to it. That doesn't mean that you can't move the dial on the no, right? I have seen it a million times where a kid is freaking out because they don't want to cross the bridge. They don't want to go to this thing. They don't want to do whatever. They're freaking out. And I've seen a million parents try to drag them through it, and it doesn't work. It's not good. But I've also seen a million parents stop and say, hey, and get on their level and say, I'm right here. What's going on? Talk to me. And if they don't have the language and your child's feet are pointing the other way, that's fear. Back it up. Go over there and suss it out, and maybe you find that you got to carry them across the bridge. Maybe they're afraid they're going to fall from the bridge. I don't know. There's a million different scenarios. But it's better to build a respect with your child and respect their no and work on that. I'm not saying make it be the be-all, end-all. I've also seen parents who are like, oh, my child doesn't want to do anything, so we don't do anything. That's not respecting their dignity in learning, right? But we have to start with the listening and listening to the no and respecting the no. It's really, really important. Eric says, and yes, with 2 exclamation points. Trust is 100%. We are working on that. Establishing trust is so important in today's society. And he says, oh, that is a heartbreaking title. We try so hard to understand the no. The twins on the spectrum is hard, and we are learning to listen and wait as they have speech delays. Yeah, it is hard, Eric. And again, we're not always going to get this 100% right, but I want to go to, I did 11. I said we were only doing 10, but I did 11. Because I think that this is at the crux of all of it too, is we have to stick up for them no matter what. You got to have your kids back, and you got to show them on a regular basis. I want to say, my parents weren't perfect, but I remember being in like 3rd grade, and I don't know what had happened. It wasn't with me. It must have been with one of my siblings. But I remember my mother saying, I will stick up for you no matter what. I will take your side no matter what. I will always stick up for you. And that is critical. That is critical, especially we live in a society and the word autism is in a lot of people's mouths, and it isn't always a good thing. We have to stick up for our kids. And you got to start with sticking up for your one kid, and then we can stick up for the community, right? But we have to stay strong for our kids. And that means at school, we have to stick up for our kids and their rights, right? It means when your child is having therapy, you got to stick up for your kid and their right. You have to balance that with giving them the dignity to learn. You got to balance that with listening. You got to balance that with respecting their no. People talk a lot about assent in therapy, and I think that assent is important. I think it's a hard line. That when we're asking a child to learn how to do something and they're saying no, I think that needs to be respected. But that doesn't mean you stop teaching that. It means you find another way, right? And that's part of sticking up for your child. Autism Journey with Elijah says, my son scares me when he says yes. He has no boundaries. I think it's me saying no more. I'm working through it. We usually come to an agreement eventually. Yeah. Well, it's hard, right? Sometimes our kids, it's funny because some of our kids have heightened awareness of things and are so afraid, and other kids have no awareness and have no fear, and they're both scary, right? But it's all a part of all the things that we talked about. If you can start by loving his adventurous spirit, right? But give him the dignity of learning, and start with things that are really positive. Here are the things to be concerned about. I know you do this on a regular basis because he's an amazing human being. But, teaching him different scenarios about we don't say yes to everything. I hearken back to my son was also somebody that if anybody was sitting on the floor, he thought that was an invitation to crawl into their lap. I remember that when he was in Fun for Fours, which was the preschool program that he was in, and it was a classroom that there were 2 of them on the spectrum and everybody else was neurotypical. And so all the parents weren't really up to speed on kids on the spectrum. And he and the other little boy that were in the class were as different as night and day. Night and day, right? So it was even harder. Parents were like, I don't really know. I can't get a real beat on this. But if we would sit in circle time, because parents would come in and volunteer, and there was one dad in particular that he sat down next to his daughter and they were going to do circle time, and my son just walked over and plopped himself in that dad's lap. And I was like, oh, okay. And the dad was like, what? I don't know what's happening. I didn't do anything, and freaked out about it. And my son would have done that with a total stranger not in the classroom, too. And we had to work on that. And it's not pleasant, because we don't want to fill them with fear, but we have to set boundaries and teach lots of different things about what's allowed and what's not allowed, right? And it gets squeamy sometimes, but I like to go back to other things that, there are parents of kiddos who constantly take their clothes off in public, and they're like, well, that's who they are and what they're doing. I'm like, that's going to make things dangerous for your child. You have to set boundaries and say to them, that's not allowed outside of your bedroom or your bathroom. You're not allowed to take your pants off. That's just a rule. our kids tend to understand rules. If we make them as black and white as possible, it's the gray stuff that gets a little fuzzier, right? But start with things that are black and white. Like you don't get to leave here without permission. He's a kiddo who understands that. I know that. Brian says a lot of your thoughts today will be taken to my dad's son moments, and the IEP this week are valuable, Shannon. I'm so glad. Yeah, I do think it's important that this last one, the stick up for them, means that all of these things that we're doing to show love and respect for the person that we love on the spectrum, we need to take that and smear that out and smear it on the people around us. And sometimes that starts with family. That, we have to say to parents who mean well but are very critical, that's not how we talk to our child. Just not how we talk to our child, right? And it means that we gotta do the serenity prayer with school, because you can't change everything and you can't change everybody's mind. But you can set examples and you can change a little bit, you can move the dial. So good luck. Let me know if you need help with the IEP, Brian. But I have great faith that it's going to go well. And we'll stay posted with you guys. We're out of time, but we've got some great shows coming up for you guys. Some amazing, amazing authors that are coming up with some great books I can't wait to share with you guys. So much that's going on. I can't wait. So we'll be back on Monday, and hopefully, we're back for the long haul. Again, as I said at the beginning of the show, everybody here is safe and fine. I'm sorry that you guys were worried. We did have a couple of weeks, but we faced the challenges. Everybody is okay. I also want to say, if you know people that are having difficulties because of the fire or the snow or something else, many organizations have reached out to us. We don't have the means to fix things for people, but many organizations have reached out to us. If you know of somebody who's having difficulty, reach out to me and I will refer you to organizations that have reached out to us. So much love to all of you and to the people that you love on the spectrum. And we are going to stay positive in 2025 if it kills me. That's what we're going to do. So more positivity back on Monday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.